The words hit me like a slap across the face, but I kept my expression neutral. As I cut another piece of prime rib around the polished mahogany table, the Maxwell family Christmas dinner continued as if Uncle Robert hadn't just declared that I didn't belong. "That's right," Aunt Linda chimed in, raising her wine glass. "Blood is thicker than water. After all." My cousins Derek and Melissa nodded approvingly. Derek, who was 28 and had never worked a day outside the family construction business, smirked at me from across the table. "No offense, Tyler, but when Grandpa built Maxwell Construction, he meant it to stay in the bloodline." "Exactly," Uncle Robert continued, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he'd perfected over 40 years of running the company. "We've been talking as a family, and we've decided that leadership positions need to go to actual Maxwells, not," he gestured vaguely in my direction, "charitable cases." I took a sip of my water and smiled politely. "I understand completely." What they didn't understand was that their charitable case had been quietly funding their lifestyle for the past 3 years. My adoption story was family legend by now. When I was 7 years old, my parents died in a car accident, and my mother's sister, Aunt Margaret, had taken me in. Uncle Robert was Margaret's husband, and while Margaret had welcomed me with open arms, Robert had always made it clear that I was an obligation, not a son. "We're raising you out of duty to your mother," he told me more than once. "Don't forget that." I never forgot. How could I when it was repeated at every family gathering, every holiday, every time I achieved something they didn't expect? When I graduated valedictorian from high school, well, we certainly invested enough in tutoring. When I got a full scholarship to MIT, lucky break, probably, helps being a minority case study. When I started my own tech company at 23, playing around with computers, he'll come back to reality soon enough. But I hadn't come back to reality. Instead, I built Meridian Technologies into a $2.8 billion enterprise specializing in construction management software and IoT solutions for smart buildings. Our clients included every major construction company in the state and several international corporations, including Maxwell Construction. What Uncle Robert didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 years ago, when Maxwell Construction was on the verge of bankruptcy due to his disastrous expansion into the Florida market, a mysterious investor had swooped in to save the company. That investor was Meridian Capital, my investment arm. I'd pumped $50 million into Maxwell Construction through a web of holding companies and shell corporations, restructured their debt and modernized their entire operation with my software systems. The company went from losing $12 million a year to making $18 million in profit. Uncle Robert took all the credit, of course. He told everyone that his brilliant leadership had turned the company around. He bought a new BMW, a vacation home in Aspen, and gave his wife and children generous bonuses for their hard work. None of them worked hard. Derek showed up late, left early, and spent most of his time on social media. Melissa had an MBA she'd never used and a title she'd never earned. And Uncle Robert, he spent most of his time on the golf course letting the professional management team I'd quietly installed run the actual business. "Tyler's been awfully quiet," Aunt Linda observed, refilling her wine glass. "Cat, got your tongue?" "Just enjoying the family conversation," I said, speaking of family. Uncle Robert said, "We've made some decisions about the company structure going forward. Here it comes. I thought Derek is going to be taking over as VP of Operations next month. Melissa will become VP of Finance, and Linda is going to head up our new Human Resources Department. Melissa beamed. I'm so excited. Finally a chance to use my MBA. What about Tyler? Aunt Margaret asked quietly. She was the only one at the table who'd ever truly treated me like family. Uncle Robert's expression hardened. Tyra has his own interest. His computer business keeps him busy enough. It's not just a computer business, Aunt Margaret said defensively. Tyler, tell them about that award you won. I'd recently been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list for transforming the construction technology industry, but I hadn't mentioned it to the family. No point in creating more jealousy. It's not important, I said. See, Uncle Robert said Tyler understands his place. He's done well for himself, considering where he came from. But Maxwell Construction is a family legacy. We need people who are truly invested in the Maxwell name. The irony was perfect. I was more invested in Maxwell Construction than anyone at that table. Literally invested, to the tune of $50 million. I couldn't agree more, I said. Drerick leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying his moment of triumph. Finally, things are going to be run the right way with real leadership. Real leadership, I repeated. That's exactly what the company needs. After dinner, I helped Aunt Margaret clear the table while the rest of the family retired to the living room to discuss their grand plans for the company. Through the kitchen doorway, I could hear Uncle Robert explaining how they were going to revolutionize the construction industry with their innovative approach. Tyler, Aunt Margaret said quietly, I want you to know that I don't agree with any of this. It's okay, Aunt Margaret. Really? No, it's not okay. You're as much a part of this family as anyone else. More than anyone else, honestly. You're the only one who visits me regularly, who calls just to check in, who remembers my birthday. Family isn't about blood, I said. It's about who shows up when it matters. Exactly. And you've always shown up. What she didn't know was that I'd been showing up in ways the family couldn't even imagine. When Melissa's wedding had gone over budget, an anonymous gift had covered the additional costs. When Derek's gambling debts had threatened to destroy his credit, a mysterious benefactor had paid them off. When Uncle Robert's medical bills from his heart surgery had mounted up, his insurance had suddenly approved coverage they'd initially denied. I'd been taking care of the Maxwell family for years, just like Aunt Margaret had taken care of me. The difference was I did it quietly, without credit or recognition, but apparently that hadn't earned me a place at the family table. I stayed for another hour, listening to them plan their takeover of the company I'd saved. Drerick outlined his vision for streamlining operations, which mostly involved firing the competent people I'd hired and replacing them with his friends. Melissa discussed optimizing cash flow, which seemed to mean giving themselves larger salaries. Uncle Robert presided over it all like a king dividing his kingdom, never suspecting that his kingdom only existed because of the charitable case. Sitting quietly in the corner, at 9 p.m., I made my excuses and left. The next morning, I was in my office by 7:00 a.m. Meridian Technologies occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise with views of the city skyline and the mountains beyond. My corner office was minimalist but comfortable, the kind of space that said successful without being ostentatious. I spent an hour reviewing the quarterly reports for all my investments, including Maxwell Construction. The company was performing well, largely because of the management team I'd installed and the technology infrastructure I'd provided. Without my continued investment, they'd last about 18 months before the old problems resurfaced. At 8:30 a.m., I called my investment manager. Sarah, it's Tyler. I need you to initiate a complete divestiture from Maxwell Construction, the construction company, Tyler, that's been one of our most successful turnarounds. They're showing consistent profits, good management, strong market position. I know, but I want out. Can I ask why? If this is about portfolio diversification, there are other options. It's personal. Sarah had been managing my investments for 5 years. She knew better than to argue when I said something was personal. How quickly do you want this done? Today. Full withdrawal of all capital, termination of all contracts, complete severance of business relationships. Tyler, that's $50 million in investments, plus ongoing contracts worth another $20 million annually. Are you sure about this? I'm sure I'll need a few hours to structure this properly. The contracts have specific termination clauses and we'll need to give them the required notice periods. How much notice for the investment withdrawal? We can do it immediately. It's structured as callable debt. For the contracts, most have 30-day termination clauses. Do it. This is going to cause some serious disruption for them. I know. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Uncle Robert was probably arriving at his office, ready to start his first day as the undisputed king of Maxwell Construction. Derek was probably planning his first streamlining meeting. Melissa was probably designing new business cards with her VP title. None of them had any idea that their kingdom was about to crumble. My phone rang at 10:15 a.m. Tyler, Sarah, I've initiated the withdrawal. Their bank should be notifying them within the hour. What about the contracts? Termination notices will be delivered by courier this afternoon. All technology support will cease in 30 days. All consulting agreements are terminated and the software licenses will revert to limited basic functionality. And the management team, the executives we place there are employed through our consulting division. They'll be reassigned to other projects. Perfect. Tyler, I have to say this company is going to be in serious trouble without our support. Are you prepared for that? They wanted to run things themselves. Now they'll get their chance. My phone started ringing again at 11:30 a.m. Uncle Robert's number flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. Voicemail. Again. Then Derek called. Voicemail. Then Melissa. Voicemail. Then Aunt Linda. Voicemail. Finally, Aunt Margaret called. Tyler, what's happening? Robert called me in a panic. He says their bank called about some loan being called in. I couldn't say. I replied honestly. He's saying something about $50 million. That's impossible, right? I mean, where would they even get that kind of loan? You'd have to ask him. Tyler, Robert wants to talk to you. He says it's urgent. I'm sure it is. Can you call him back? He's beside himself. I'll think about it. I didn't call him back. Instead, I went to lunch with a potential client, spent the afternoon reviewing proposals for new investments, and had dinner with Aunt Margaret at her favorite restaurant. She didn't mention the family business crisis, and neither did I. My phone had 17 missed calls by the time I got home. The next morning, Uncle Robert was waiting in my office lobby when I arrived at 7 a.m. Tyler, thank God. We need to talk. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled. His expensive suit was wrinkled and his face was pale with exhaustion. Uncle Robert, this is a surprise. Tyler, I need your help. Something terrible has happened. I led him to my office, noting how his eyes widened as he took in the scope of my business, the busy trading floor visible through glass walls, the expensive art, the panoramic city views. Tyler, I had no idea your business was. This place is. What can I do for you, Uncle Robert? He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. Our main investor has pulled out. $50 million gone just like that. And our technology contracts have been terminated. The software systems that run our entire operation. We're losing access in 30 days. That's terrible. It's worse than terrible. It's a disaster. Without that investment, we can't meet our obligations. Without the software, we can't manage our projects. The company is going to collapse. What do your lawyers say? They say the contracts were written to allow exactly this kind of termination. Whoever structured this deal was very smart. There's no legal recourse. I'm sorry to hear that. Uncle Robert leaned forward desperately. Tyler, I know we haven't always. I know I can be difficult sometimes, but your family. We're family and family helps family. Are we family? Of course we are. Because last Sunday you made it very clear that family business is only for real family, not adopted kids like me. The color drained from his face. Tyler, I didn't mean. You said blood is thicker than water. You said the company should stay in the bloodline. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Were you? Or are you just saying that because you need something from me? Uncle Robert was now sweating despite the air conditioning. Ty, I'll be honest. We need help. Serious help. I don't know what kind of connections you have in your business, but if you could introduce us to some investors. Investors? Yes. Someone who might be willing to step in where this other company pulled out. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Meridian Capital website. You mean someone like this? I turned the screen so he could see it. Meridian Capital's homepage showed our portfolio, our investment strategy, and our recent successes, including Maxwell Construction. Uncle Robert squinted at the screen. Meridian Capital. Wait, that name sounds familiar. They were your mystery investor. You know them? I am them. Meridian Capital is my investment firm. Uncle Robert stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. That's impossible. I own Meridian Technologies, which owns Meridian Capital, which invested $50 million in Maxwell Construction 3 years ago. Me, but that would mean it means I saved your company. I restructured your debt, installed professional management, provided the technology systems that made you profitable and turned you from a failing business into a success story. Uncle Robert's mouth opened and closed without sound. It also means, I continued, that when you told me family business is only for real family, you were talking to the person who owns 60% of your family business. Tyler, I had no idea. Of course you didn't. You never asked what I actually do for a living. You just assumed I was playing around with computers. This is incredible. You built all this. I built all this while you were taking credit for turning the company around. I was the one actually doing it. Uncle Robert was now openly crying. Tyra, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. Yes, you were. Can you put the investment back? Can we fix this? Why would I do that? Because we're family. 2 days ago, I wasn't family. I was an adopted kid who didn't belong. What changed? I changed. I was wrong. I see that now. Do you? Or do you just see that you need my money? Uncle Robert wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Tyler, I know I don't deserve your help, but it's not just about me. Derek, Melissa, Linda, they all have families. The company employs 247 people. All those families depend on Maxwell Construction. I know. I've been supporting those families for 3 years. Then you know what's at stake. I leaned back in my chair and studied my uncle. He looked broken, desperate, completely different from the confident patriarch who'd ruled Christmas dinner 2 days ago. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. Uncle Robert looked up with hope in his eyes. Maxwell Construction will fail within 6 months without my support. When it does, I'll buy the assets for pennies on the dollar. Tyler, no. I'll rename it Meridian Construction. I'll retain all the employees who want to stay with better pay and benefits, and I'll run it the way it should have been run all along. What about us? What about the family? What about you, Derek and Melissa? They're counting on those promotions. Linda needs the income, and I've put everything into this company. Derek will be fired the first week. He's incompetent and lazy. Melissa can apply for an entry-level position if she wants to actually learn the business. Linda can also apply, but she'll need real qualifications, not just a family name. And me, you can apply, too, for a foreman position, maybe if you're willing to actually work for a living. Uncle Robert stared at me in shock. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You wanted to run a family business with real family only. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you asked for. Tyler, please. We can work this out. I'll make you a partner. Give you the respect you deserve. I don't want to be your partner. I don't want your respect. I want you to understand what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. What do you want from me? I want you to admit what you did wrong. I already said I was sorry. No, you apologize because you need my money. I want you to admit what you actually did wrong. Uncle Robert was quiet for a long moment. But I treated you like you weren't family. Keep going. I made you feel unwelcome at family gatherings. Keep going. I dismissed your achievements and made assumptions about your success. And I never gave you credit for what you accomplished. What else? Uncle Robert's voice broke. I never thanked you for all the times you helped us. The anonymous gifts, the paid bills, the problems that just mysteriously went away. I know that was you. How do you know? Because you're the only one in the family who actually cares about other people. You're the only one who would help without taking credit. And I threw it all away because I was threatened by your success. I was jealous that the adopted kid had accomplished more than any of us. I sat quietly for a moment, letting his words sink in. There's one more thing, I said finally. What? You need to call Derek and Melissa and Linda. You need to tell them exactly what happened and exactly who I am. And you need to apologize to them for lying about the family business being blood only. Tyler, that will humiliate me. Yes, it will. Uncle Robert nodded slowly. And if I do all that, then we'll talk about maybe restructuring the investment, different terms, different management structure, different family dynamics. What kind of different terms? I'll own 80% of the company. You and Derek and Melissa can earn back equity through actual performance. Linda can apply for a real job like anyone else. And the management structure, professional management that I choose with family members earning their positions through competence, not blood. And the family dynamics, we start over All of us as equals who respect each other's contributions. Uncle Robert was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you help us? All those years, even when we treated you badly? Because Aunt Margaret taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up when people need you, even when they don't deserve it, especially then. Uncle Robert stood up. Slowly. I'll make those phone calls. Good, Tyler. Yes, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I watched him walk toward the elevator, looking older and smaller than when he'd arrived. My phone was already ringing. Sarah, probably wanting to know if I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't lost my mind. I just learned something important about family. Sometimes the people who love. You need to lose everything before they can see what they already had. And sometimes the adopted kid becomes the one who saves them all. 3 months later, Meridian Construction was profitable, again with Uncle Robert working as a project foreman and actually enjoying honest work for the first time in years. Derek had been fired as promised, but Melissa was thriving in an entry-level position where she was finally learning the business from the ground up. And every Sunday I had dinner with Aunt Margaret, who always saved me a seat at the family table because she'd always known that the most important thing about family isn't where you come from. It's who you choose to show up for again and again, no matter